invite up Jason Kuhn here in a second. So here's what we're going to do. Jason's going to talk to us, as he has in the past, about team building, mental toughness. Some of you have heard Jason speak before. I've heard Jason speak maybe 24 times. It never gets old. I learn something every time I hear from him. If you're hearing Jason for the first time, you're in for a treat. Jason has a great company called Stonewall Solutions where he speaks for a living now. And as a motivational speaker, building teams, done a great job. Recently got involved with some big-time pitches in the major leagues and helped one of them win the World Series for Atlanta, which has got him a lot of national attention on ESPN and Fox Sports and so forth, which is great to see. It's great to see they're finally getting around, they're understanding what you're talking about and putting it to work. After Jason speaks, I want to introduce you to the dogs, which really are the star of the show. And then we'll talk a little bit about the tournament and get going. But relax and enjoy this. This really is an amazing thing. So Jason, thanks for coming back this year. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Phil. All right, for those of you who have been here before, welcome back. Good to have you, especially Outdoor Pride, the soon-to-be winning team, right? That's right. All right, round two for us. And everyone who hasn't been here, welcome to the Suck. Just joking. Today's a great time. I'm a performance coach. I've been doing that for 8 years since I got out of the SEAL teams. I took some of the lessons learned. I have a background in baseball. And when I got out of the SEAL team, some of my buddies who had made it up through the minor leagues and the pro levels started asking me advice on mental toughness, on focus. And I started thinking back to my experiences and how I could take those and translate them to the environment that they operate in and help them succeed, which has bled into the corporate realm. And I've had the opportunity to be here, and it's an honor, and I really appreciate it, to get to be back here and be around some team guys, hang out, have some fun. Like I said, my buddy Sal here from Buds, we haven't seen each other in nearly a decade. And my first troop, Steve Brown, it's just awesome to get back around and be around everyone. And it wouldn't be possible without all of you and without everyone who set this up. So thank you very, very much. So as I said, I'm a performance coach, but before that, I was a SEAL, and then before that, I was a baseball player. I played in college for a top 25 nationally ranked team. I was a pitcher, a good one, well on my way to the pros, and I got the yips. Has anybody heard of the yips before? Steve Blass, Chuck Knobloch, Mark Wohlers, and you get tension in your arm. So when I would go to throw a baseball, my arm would seize up with tension, and I couldn't throw it properly. I threw 6 wild pitches in a single inning, and that was the most anyone ever had in NCAA Division I back in 2001. And it still is the most anyone ever has 20 years later, right? So anything worth doing is worth overdoing. Less than number one right there. When I failed at baseball, it was really hard because it was all that I ever wanted to do. And it was where I was going to make my name. I was overlooked often when I was younger. I didn't like that, and baseball was where nobody could mess with me because I was good at it. I was good at it because I put in the work. And when I lost it due to what many attributed to mental weakness, that bothered me. So 2001 was also the same year the World Trade Centers were attacked, and I decided I was going to join the Navy and become a SEAL. I actually read a story about Mike Thornton, and that inspired me to join the Navy versus the other branches and become a part of the SEAL teams. And a few years in, there was one moment in particular where a call went out over the radio, and my teammates said that I was pinned down. And I remember thinking in that moment, just very viscerally, that whatever we do next is going to determine whether we live or die. And obviously we were able to perform because I'm still here, but I want to walk a little bit through that journey. How do you go from a young man who's so full of tension you can't throw a ball properly to being able to perform in some of the most high-pressure environments of life and death, and then how you can take that into your paintball game today, into your businesses, and hopefully into your personal lives. So I decided I'm going to join the Navy. I want to get all the answers to the test, flood myself with information. And I'm watching a Discovery Channel video on training, and one of the interviewers asks one of the SEALs, what is it that makes you guys so good, and how can we apply it to our lives? And he laughs and he says, oh, it's not that we're that good, it's that everybody else sucks. And when he said that, I laughed just like some of you did because I liked his attitude. I wanted to be like that guy. But I didn't really understand what he meant by that until I reflected on my own career. What I realized as a young baseball player, my standard for performance was often based in comparison to the competition. So I want to be better than the other pitchers on our team to be the best pitcher, and better than the other teams in our conference to be the best team. And we were. I got to pitch a lot. We won our conference. But it wasn't truly a relentless standard. When I got into the teams, my mentality was changed because we never really compared ourselves to anyone else. It wasn't, can we get a little bit better than the rest? It was, how good can we get? Maximization of potential was the standard we were held accountable to pursuing each day. And the way we reach max potential or optimal performance in high-pressure environments was through a trained ability to relentlessly execute fundamentals under stress. That's all performance is. It's an ability to execute fundamentals under stress. What that means to me is no matter what's going on around us, we focus on what we can affect and work the problem. And fundamentals are simply controllable actions of value. And what I recognized was you can't force the outcome you want. You can't force winning. You know, I was younger, I would have been like, yeah, whatever. But what I mean by that is if you had absolute control over winning and producing the outcome you want, when you compete, you would have wanted everything you ever had. Or if you and I were to compete against each other at something, we would all win, and that's not possible. So we don't force the results, we influence them. And if we know that to be true, then our aim ought to be to influence the results to the greatest degree possible. And the way we do that was by demanding perfection of everything within our control and eliminate the variables. And that's what was taken to the next level in the teams, was the attention to detail and the preparation and the effort. We eliminate the variables to competition, stack the odds in our favor. But the key is to understand fundamentals, the controllable actions of value, when placed in a sequence of order, becomes a process. And I believe there's a process to winning in competition, there's a process to winning and succeeding in life, but we have to understand that fundamentals exist not only in how we execute action, how we do what we do, but also in our mindset, how we think, and in our culture, how we interact with each other. And all three of those working together produce best possible outcome. And best possible outcomes over time creates consistency, consistent high performance. Consistency creates separation, and separation is what makes us elite, as there are only a few. And I think I can prove that that's true, because we can take anyone out and teach you how to jump, dive, and shoot. It's not all that hard, and it's a lot of fun. But the skill sets alone don't equate to being effective in combat, right? You've got to be able to apply them in any environmental condition. So something that I learned was the environment will not influence my actions will influence the environment. But I need my actions to become habitual, innate in my character, without thought. And a lot of the ways we need to think and interact with each other is different than how we naturally feel. So when things become dangerous, your default human response is self-preservation. Save yourself, survive. But we have a better chance of winning that fight if we shift our focus into each other and work together to solve that problem. So we have to create habits that are often different than how we feel until they become innate in our character without thought, and when it goes off, we're just right there where we need to be. And even though we can't force results, we don't surrender them or quit caring or become apathetic, we fight for them. We fight for the results without moderation, because moderation is for cowards, another phrase that was taught to me in BUD/S. And as it was said earlier, you won't rise to the occasion, you default to your standard of training. So the habits we create today and how we act, how we think, and how we interact with our team have a direct impact on our ability to perform, especially in high-pressure environments. It makes us who we are when it matters most. And one of those mental habits is being committed. We got to commit to the mission and to winning. And one of the questions that was posed to me a while back was, what is the difference between the guys who make it through BUD/S and the guys who don't make it through BUD/S? And honestly, I didn't know how to answer that question other than on a superficial level. Like, hey, the guys that made it were completely committed, they were all in, and the guys who didn't were not. But I was like, it didn't make sense to me, because the guys who got to BUD/S and failed, who rang out, rang the bell, quit, believed they were that way too. You know, I'll die before I quit, everything else. They said the same things that we said. However, they ended up ringing out and quitting. So I've thought about that, and I think what it is the guys who make it through are driven by meaningful purpose, something greater than status. I mean, when you show up to BUD/S, you've got myself. I was nicknamed Slackjaw by the instructor staff right off the bat, because I have a receding jawline and a long neck. And you got Sal. Where's Sal at? Where are you at? Defranco, need to run off with it. Sal can't stop smiling. There he is right there. See, he's smiling already. No matter how much pain we were in, he's always smiling, and sometimes that would draw a little bit of extra attention from the staff, but it was all good. So, but how do you take, these two, just goofballs, normal guys, and then these other dudes show up and they know all the things. They walk the walk, they talk the talk, but then they end up quitting. And as I said, I think it's meaningful purpose. A coach once asked me, I was down at Georgia Tech working with a team, and she says, was it the fear of death that drove you to be all in all the time? I said, well, sure, that's a part of it, but there's lots of things. But the biggest thing, the greatest fear for me, and I think any other team guy that I've ever talked to, was not the fear of dying. It was letting a teammate down, right? Through a lack of effort or through a lack of attention to detail and preparation, you can make mistakes. Mistakes happen. In fact, if you're an officer, that's how you get promoted. The more mistakes you make, the higher up you go, right? But for the rest of us, it's a little bit different. And in the teams, you have a reputation. And there's a hierarchy in how we view each other, but the one thing you know from the most seasoned combat operators to the newest new guy straight out of BUD/S is that the guy next to you will not quit. He's resilient. When he gets knocked down, he will get back up because that's been proven in Hell Week. And that provides a foundation in trust, right? And all of the uncertainty of a combat operation, all of the unknowns, the one thing you can always know and be certain in is that the guy next to you will not leave you. He will hold the line, and he will be prepared, and he will be ready. And that provides our foundation in trust, and that trust is sacred to us, and we don't compromise it for anything because it's the one thing that we always have. And building that trust takes discipline. Discipline, as it was presented to me, is doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it. It's never easy, but it's always worth it, and it's an action. All actions require a motivation. So desire fuels discipline. The more desire I have, the more discipline I can apply. And if that desire is something superficial, like status, I want to go home and tell everyone I'm a Navy SEAL, it's not strong enough. Hell Week's going to get you. But if it's something deeper than that, then you've got a fighting chance. And so for me, I think desire comes from meaningful purpose. 9/11, watching the second plane hit live in my dorm room. It pissed me off. I wanted to fight about it. Failing short of my potential in baseball in an embarrassing manner. I needed a path for redemption from that failure. And I loved being a part of a team in college ball, and I knew I would find that even more so in special operations, and I did. And all of those, amongst others, formed a deep, meaningful purpose that fueled my desire and fed my discipline and allowed me to have the effort that was necessary in the moment. And as leaders in any competitive environment, if we understand how that works, how meaningful purpose drives desire, which drives discipline and creates effort, we can increase the engagement of our employees. And an increased engagement in a disengaged environment gives us a huge competitive advantage. And when we do things that are meaningful, it helps drive us through the weak moments. So I think that meaningful purpose comes from two places. I think it comes from intrinsic passions. There's just things we're interested in and enjoy doing, and also life experiences. So when I got out of the teams and I decided I was going to help other people through these lessons learned, one of them was Tyler Matzik from the Atlanta Braves. He had been out of baseball for 5 years due to the yips. Everything that the big leagues had for sports psychology, none of it worked, and we worked together, developed a system, and he got back and then won the World Series. And that's very meaningful to me because I had been through it, and that's what drove me and him through the hard times. So it translates into other competitive environments. And applying that discipline is not easy. That's where mental toughness comes into place. Mental toughness is how we respond to adversity. And adversity is when we meet circumstances that are outside of our control and unfair. And when we meet circumstances that are outside of our control and unfair, it naturally makes us feel frustrated, disappointed, and resentful towards the entities that helped create that situation. But victimhood produces more victimhood. If we stay there, we get stuck. We can't move forward. What most people will do in those situations is they allow their emotion to dictate their next action. But mentally tough people interrupt that cycle, the cause and effect cycle, and they realize that they can control how they react and what they do next. And what they do next will either have value or no value in an effort to win, regardless of how they feel about where they're at. Generally, when we meet adversity, what we'll do is we react according to the emotion, and that's going to come out in the form of self-preservation. We start to complain, we start to blame other people, and then we surround ourselves with others who will affirm our self-loathing, helpless feelings. But mentally tough people shift their focus off of what they can't control and back into two things: the execution of action. It doesn't matter how I got here. What matters is what I'm going to do about it. And they shift their focus back into the team. They get their mind off themselves and back into their team. And what motivates the ability to shift your focus is appreciating the value adversity provides in our lives. You see, adversity creates a struggle. And the struggle creates reward, or at least opportunity for reward, dependent on how we choose to respond. And there is no reward without the struggle, and the greater the struggle, the greater the reward. That's why our instructors told us to embrace the suck. And the one problem that all of us were always going to have is the problem of having problems, right? But it's the challenges in life that give us the opportunity for the virtuous action that we all admire in each other. And by believing through faith that there's purpose to the experiences that we go through and that there's value to be gained from them assigns greater or less meaning to that pain. Just like baseball, I thought it was the worst thing that ever happened at the time. I would have done anything to be able to throw the ball properly on and continue on with my career. When I went down to the World Series to watch Tyler pitch, I looked at my wife and I said, having lived the life that I've been blessed to live, I'd rather be here watching him pitch in the game than pitch in the game myself, because it was fulfilling, but it took the response. And where I really learned this lesson is in the most dangerous situation I found myself in. Back to being pinned down there. At least my teammates said I was pinned down. We went on we were right before we deployed. My daughter was born. I spent 3 weeks with her as a newborn, and then I went overseas, and now the deployment is almost over. We had packed everything up, sealed everything up, and I was on a call with my wife planning a trip to Disney World with Gretchen. Some of you know Gretchen and Mackenzie, she was a little baby. We're planning this trip to Disney World, and our leadership comes back in and it says, we're going on one more. We were going into a city that was particularly dangerous, and the new platoon behind us was still getting their feet wet. So it was a turnover op. And the team guys know the turnover op is the one that always goes bad, right? So that's what happened here. We were in advise and assist role, at least on paper. So we had our team cut down, and we had to take a lot of the local soldiers with us in the country in which we were operating. I was a reconnaissance assault team leader and a sniper. Typically, I'd have a few guys on my team. I want to be careful with number and tactics, but we got cut down to myself, one other SEAL, and one of the local soldiers, who was a decent guy, but not nearly as capable as we were due to a lack of training. We take off on the operation. We're in a city. We get to where we're going. Our job is to climb a building and provide a sniper overwatch, and an assault team is going to come kick in the door of the safe house where we believe this guy is staying, and then they'll kill or capture him according to how he responds when we get there. My teammate is setting up some ladders and equipment, and generally we would protect him from all sides, but since we didn't have enough guys, I tried to keep some distance and was just watching everywhere I could. About 20 yards ahead of me, there's a cinder block wall, chest high, and a courtyard, and a lot of people sleeping outside because it's hot. A man is sitting there, and I notice him, and he's looking right at my buddy. He's got an AK-47 down by his feet, and there's a standoff. All right, but they know we're there. We see them. He's got the weapon, and he goes for it. My buddy drops his equipment, and he shoots him in the chest. The guy goes down. Another guy runs, grabs an AK, wheels it towards me, levels off, and I started shooting him. As I was engaging him, we started taking fire. I couldn't tell where it was coming from at first. Once I was sure that guy was down, I scanned left and right, but I forgot to look up. There were about 4 shooters on a rooftop 40 yards out, and by the grace of God, missed with their first volley. I dropped straight down to the ground, crawled towards the wall to cut off the angle, found my buddy who had already peeled behind me and had a position to shoot. However, there were some trees and things in his way that was deflecting his rounds, and the fire coming down was pretty hot, so I started crawling to him as he was trying to cover fire for me. And as I'm crawling to him, he looks at me and he says, "Stop, go back to where you were." And I knew that I was getting shot at, but in the moment it's hard to know. He told me later he could see a few rounds flying a few inches over my head. So I started scooting myself backwards, looking over my shoulder, and I found a little pile of rocks, and I got behind those and was able to reset. Behind me and off to the right is a street, but I can't see down it because it's at an angle, and there's a big pile of trash. And I crawled through the pile of trash to conceal myself because I needed to check our flank, because that's what I would do if I were the bad guys. I'd come up that street and shoot us in the back. Quick prayer, like, man, God, please don't let anybody be coming down this street. We got all we can handle right now. We're calling back to to our assault force to come help us. We're signaling our position, doing everything we can. We just did not have the bodies to handle the amount of fire that we were taking. So I peeked down that street. There's about 15 people walking towards me with aggressive body language, with intention. Some of them were armed, some of them were not. This was late in the war. In fact, the war was over, and I want to make sure I did the right thing. So I fired 2 warning shots over their heads. Dumbest thing I've ever done, because when you fire warning shots at people that want to kill you, they know where you're at and they start shooting back. So we've got contact front, meaning we're fighting with the enemy in the front, and then we've got a contact right. That makes an L-shaped crossfire, and it's a bad spot to be in. Right about that time, two guys jump in a car, drive it straight at me, and I shot the engine block a couple of times as per our rules of engagement, and it looks cool in the movies. It did not work at all, right? So when the apocalypse kicks off here soon, don't shoot the engine block. Just engage the windshield until the car is disabled. So disabled the car, jump back, and I get back behind this pile of rocks, and I'm just stuck. I can't move, but I know I have to move or I'm going to die here. And that's when my teammate called in, Jason is pinned down, and you guys need to get up here now. He didn't say it freaked out, but he said it really seriously. And then when I heard that come over my headset is when the reality of the situation set in. It was starting to get pretty sporty pretty quick. I'm supposed to be in Disney World in like 3 days, and here we are getting gassed up. And the whole deployment had been quiet, and now it's all lit off. And in that moment, I remember just kind of slowing back down. And that's when I thought, okay, whatever we do next, if I go left, right, try to break contact, assault through, whatever it is, all the plays in the playbook, but whatever one we decide is going to determine whether we live or die. And there was a moment of fear. I thought briefly about my little girl, but then I thought, oh, hell no, man. If you're going to take me out, you're going to have to earn it. All right, you're going to have to earn it. I owe it to the guys that are out there trying to save my life, to everyone who came before me and those who will come after me. And I harnessed my aggression, or my emotion, and channeled it into aggression. You know, my first few years in the teams, I didn't get to deploy to a combat zone, and that pissed me off. It's like, hey, man, this is where you wanted to be, so do what you came here to do and wage war. And that's the challenge I would have for you as well. When things get hard in life and in business, hey, that's the game. Do what you came here to do and wage war, because the one thing you can leave behind is your legacy. And I thought about that as like, man, you may die out here. You have no control over that, but you can let your little girl know who her daddy was in this moment by how hard you fight and what you do. And then I shifted my focus into the action that was necessary. The training is so vital. I could hear the instructors, I could hear their voice telling me what I needed to do in this situation. I was prepared for it. But the only thing that I had absolute control over in that moment is what I did next. And that's where you want to shift your focus into. It's the only thing of value, the action that you're going to take. So we start signaling again, returning fire, and then I look over at my buddy, and he's shooting, and he's moving, and he's communicating, and he's doing everything that he possibly can to save my life. And when I shifted my focus into him, any remaining fear went away, because I love that guy, man. It's like you shoot at him, and now we got to hunt you down. And eventually they get a striker, an armored vehicle, up to my position. Morgan Luttrell is running for office in Texas as well. He threw 3 grenades into that courtyard, which provided some cover fire. I was able to get up off of the ground. It felt like a few rounds whizzed by me as I ran, and I dove into the back of the striker. The local soldiers were responsible for that striker, but they had all ran away. There was nobody on the 50 cal machine gun. So I got on the 50 cal machine gun, was able to suppress the fire that we were taking from the right, and then I rejoined our assault force, who was going to handle the contact in the front. When I got back over there, my platoon chief said, hey, man, are you good? I said, yeah, chief, I'm good, I think. But yeah, no, I'm good. He said, what do we got up there? What do we need to do? I said, chief, man, we need to drop a bomb on that building, and we're done. Let's go home, right? And he said, no, we can't drop bombs. We're going to have to counter-assault. We were going in from a different direction. He said, you've seen it. You know what it looks like up there. I need you to lead it. Are you good? I said, yeah, I'm good. But we're not extraordinary people. We're ordinary people who can do extraordinary things through a trained ability to control this and this. And that's all it was. So I put my infrared laser up on the gate, and I dialed my focus into it. You see, you don't block things out. You try to block out the crowd, block out the nerves, whatever it is, you just think about it more. So you dial your focus into something small, and it brings you down a layer, and that's what I did. And then it's managing the emotions, right? So that's over with. It just happened, but it's over with, and we're going right back in. So I took a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And what we're doing there is letting go. I'm releasing emotional attachment and mental attention to the past to lock into the present moment to win the fight in front of me. You let go, lock in, win the fight in front of you over and over and over again, because I'm not the only one going in that courtyard. I got a buddy's back to cover, and it's selfish for me to be anything other than my best before we do, or distracted. And then in we went. The battle lasted from the night, went into the day. Delta Force came out to provide a QRF, and at the end of the day, we won. But I think about that shift of focus into my teammate and how that played into our ability to perform. The team first mindset is not just something we should do because it's the morally correct thing to do. It has performance value. You'll reach a higher level of performance, not only as a team, but also as an individual by focusing on others more than yourself. And I want to prove that. Every day we show up to do anything, we have one or two motivations, and it's like a scale that we're battling back and forth. One is status, and one is service. Status means I want to be a big deal and receive praise and accolades from everyone else, titles and everything. And it's good to have goals. We should have goals and benchmarks we want to achieve, but when our driving force, our meaningful purpose is for that, it drives failure because I can't control anybody. For me to be a big deal, I'm dependent on other people thinking I'm a big deal. And I can't control what anybody thinks about me. And if all my self-worth is attached to something I can't control, and I feel a need to force something that I can't control, that's where pressure once didn't exist is now created. That evolves into stress, and stress is not conducive to high performance. And a lot of times, that status-driven nature is not out of arrogance. Sometimes it is. We had the biggest, fastest, I probably shouldn't say his name since it's on camera, the biggest, you know who I'm talking about, right? The best quitter ever in Buds. I mean, this guy could do everything except for make it through Hell Week. And the instructors even liked him. And when we saw him cry tears and quit Monday morning of Hell Week, and we were all happy to see him go because he was a great asset when things were comfortable for him. But as soon as it got hard, he was the first one to break down, blame his whole boat crew, anyone but himself. And he was arrogant. For most of us, it's not that way. It's out of a need for affirmation. You know, we're social creatures. We like to belong. We all have a need for significance in life. But when that evolves into a dependency is when it degrades our ability to perform. And I learned that about myself in sniper school. I got to go to sniper school as a new guy. At the time, it was mostly reserved for guys who had been around a little while. So I get to go. And all the guys there, we got the Team 3 guys coming out of Ramadi, and some of the instructors are legendary, and I look up to these guys. They're what I want to be one day in my career. And I was a good shooter, but when I would get on the line near my peers, I would get a little bit nervous, and I would shoot bad. So one of the instructors, Turbo, if you guys know Turbo, comes up to me, and he says, "Listen, man, I've seen you shoot by yourself, and when you practice, you know what to do, and you're capable. But when you get around the other guys, you suck. What's the deal?" I tried to answer him. You know, I'm a grown man. I'm a Navy SEAL at this point. I can't quite get the words out properly. And he says, "Shut up. It's the company you're in, isn't it?" I said, "Yeah, I think it is." And he said, "Listen, man, if you don't believe in yourself, then why should anybody else? Right? It's got to come internally. If you want to win and succeed, it's got to start with yourself, and it's got to come with believing in your team first." And then he said, "We have Iraq and Afghanistan going on right now, and we need snipers, and you're capable, but we're not going to be able to make use of your capability because you're more concerned about gaining the acceptance of your peers than just embracing your God-given best and giving it to the team." It was such a simple statement, but it was so profound for me. So the next day I was getting retested, me and 4 other guys, and I tried to just focus on one shot at a time and make that my whole world and let my motivation be in support of the teams. And of those 4 guys, I was the only one that passed that day. And I think it had nothing to do with the mechanics of how I fired my weapon. The only thing that changed was in my mindset and in my motivation. And I thought about that. Like, how did a team-first mindset increase my ability to perform? Well, when we serve the team without expectation of anything in return, I believe it creates 2 performance values. The first thing it does is it reduces anxiety to a minimal level. All right? And the second thing it does is it builds trust and eventually love within a team. And those are the greatest motivators of aggression. They're the greatest motivators of anything. How does it reduce anxiety? Before you're going on a combat operation, you're in the ready room, you're throwing on all your gear, you got music playing, whatever. Well, every now and then it hits you. Hey, man, this is dangerous, what we're doing. And if I start getting nervous before an operation, it's out of self-concern for my own life and death. So anxiety is like a parasite feeding off of misplaced concern. If I defer my concern to the well-being of teammate and mission, then it's got nothing to feed upon. And when we act like that, we then create the emotions, the feelings of trust and love. But the action creates the feeling, not the other way around. And one of the biggest problems that I see with teams that I get to work with is we have core values, we have mission statements, we have all the right wording, but you have to live it to feel it. Otherwise, it's just words. It doesn't work any other way. And that's what we were able to do really well, and it's very powerful. And I can prove that as well. If I were to give you the opportunity to come fight any of us, any Navy SEAL, and if you win the fight and it's on camera, you can tell everybody and post it on social media that you're more badass than a Navy SEAL, most people wouldn't accept that. They wouldn't do it, right? But think about the person you love the most in the world and put that person in your mind right now. And imagine that we had that person behind us and you had to come through us to get to him or you'd never see him again. Would you fight us now? Probably everybody would, right? But the problem didn't change, just the motivation behind the problem changed. In one situation you won't fight, and the second one you will because you're fighting for something greater than yourself. Something that you love, something that you trust, something that is worth it, something that is meaningful to you. But that didn't just pop out of thin air. It doesn't just happen magically. It was created by meeting an expectation and a standard over the course of time. And to me, that's what the brotherhood was all about. Our standard is incredibly difficult. Like I think John said, it's not just getting there. It's once you get there, it's still really, really hard. But the harder it is, the more trust you build within the team. And then you fight for each other in the moment of truth. So all teams, you have one of three options. You either work against each other, with each other, that's the status quo. But elite teams work for each other. And that's the brotherhood. Somebody once asked me, what does brotherhood mean to you? Again, I didn't know how to answer it until I thought through it. Brotherhood does not mean we like each other all the time. It doesn't mean we agree with each other all the time. It means we set aside our differences to serve a cause greater than ourselves. And combat kind of forces that because there's survival, right? If we're loading up our trucks to go get in a fight, any difference I may have with my teammate becomes obsolete. We're going to set each other up for success and make each other better because I don't want to die, and neither does he. In other competitive environments, it's a little bit more difficult because you have the luxury. It's not life and death, but winning works all the same. And if you set a standard that everybody can reach, you build that baseline of trust within each other. When adversity hits and you have problems like we've had for the past few years, you'll fight for each other and you'll be the one to survive. But we have to do that. We have to make that team-first mindset habitual. Like I said, it's not natural. So one phrase that they taught us in the teams was we patrolled was to say this in our minds. If I get shot at right now, what will I do to support my buddy? If I get shot at right now, what will I do to support my buddy? And you're just saying it over and over again as you patrol. So when I get shot at, when adversity hits, not whose fault is it, right? In that fight, if we had had the normal amount of people we would have had, we would have won that fight right off of the bat, or better yet, just captured those guys, which is the easy way to do it. But it didn't. If I sit there and I complain about it in the moment and things that it makes no difference. What will I do to work the problem in support of my teammate until it's your default response? And where I saw that occur in one of the most impactful events of my life was a helicopter crash. This was a training operation, and we were training to take down a ship, VBSS we call it. I was on the first helicopter and we roped onto the ship. The second helicopter crashed into the ship, and it's a nightmare. When we get up to the crash site, I get up to my buddy and I'm looking at him, and he's banged up bad and he's twisted, but he's not bleeding externally, and he's also our most experienced medic. The other medic that we had, our corpsman we call him, was knocked out completely unconscious. That was also Morgan. And when I get to my buddy, I looked at him and I said, what do we do? What do we do for you? But before he would give us any information on how to provide aid to him, he started telling us the location and how to provide aid and prioritize all the other wounded members of our team. So we got done with that, and we're loading them up on the one good helicopter and calling in more to come get us. Everybody's fanning out, working at once through a decentralized command. And I come back to him, and I said, brother, what do we do? How bad are you? And he said, hey, man, I've shattered my hips. It turns out he had broken his pelvis completely in half, in more than one place. He said, I think I've cut my femoral artery and I'm bleeding out internally and I'm going to die in about 20 minutes. And he said it just clear as day like that. We had used all the stretchers on the other guys. All the other guys he had told us about. We had none left, and we couldn't drag them because we'd certainly kill them. So we went running through the ship, me and one of the members from TRADET, and we're running through the ship searching for a stretcher. It's like one of those bad dreams where you're just not getting anywhere, but we found one of those big orange-style baskets and ripped it off the wall, and we got him on it, and we got him loaded up onto the helicopter and got him to surgery, and he lived. But I think about that moment often because, you know, he put his teammates ahead of himself. His life was on a running clock with an unknown amount of time, yet he still took the time to place his team ahead of himself. And that's not a decision that's made in the moment. Selflessness was a trait that he had made innate in his character until he didn't know how to be anything different. My man was just working the problem. And when you look at a man and you know that he would die for you, right there in that moment, you trust that man. And that trust in each other is what gives us the courage to get back out in the fight and win the fight in front of us. It's how winning is done, and it pays to be a winner. My teammate, he went down to Florida to a rehab center. They told him he was going to be medically discharged from the Navy, get a retirement, it's a good deal. If he was able to walk again and everything else, it was going to be like a 2-year process. This is a true story. In 8 months or so, less than a year, he gets himself operationally cleared, meets us out on deployment. I told the stories backwards because mental toughness is a shift of focus into your team. The helicopter crash happened before the gunfight that I just told you about. He got himself operationally cleared, met us on deployment late, and he was the same guy that was out there with me on the reconnaissance team, shooting, moving, and communicating. And he saved my life with screws still fresh in his hips because he was resilient. He was driven by something greater than himself. He was mentally tough and able to shift in focus, and he had a team-first mindset. There was no way he was allowing his platoon to deploy without him. And it's powerful, and it stays with me, and I help teams apply that in their lives. I try to apply it in my life. And every now and then, in these high-pressure environments, we end up in a high-leverage situation. And that's a situation where this moment right here is going to determine whether we win or lose the game, whether we live or die. The high-leverage situation in a high-pressure environment. And this is the last concept I'll talk about. And I haven't shared this one at this event before, so this is new for the people who haven't been here. I was working with a New York Yankee. And he was playing behind A-Rod and Teixeira, and he wasn't getting a lot of playing time. And he said, man, I got to get a hit every single time, or my career's going to be over. And that was real. That threat was real. But I said, brother, you got to free yourself from the requirement of the outcome. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, well, your job's not to get a hit every time. That's impossible. Nobody's ever hit 1,000, especially in the big leagues, man. If you get out 7 out of 10 times, that's a 300 batting average. You're in the Hall of Fame. So the standard that you're placing on yourself is impossible to reach, and you're trying to force something that's impossible, creating pressure and stress. So free yourself from the requirement of the outcome. And that works in any competitive environment. Your job's not to be perfect all of the time. It's to be the best that you can be at what you do in that given moment. And I said, be thankful, man. Be thankful for the stadium, for the crowd, even your worst hecklers would trade positions with you in a heartbeat. Thankfulness, gratefulness is the tactical nuclear weapon to negativity in the mind. It just wipes it out because they're opposed to each other. You can't be thankful and unhappy at the same time. So I would tell him to think about me because I blew my baseball career due to no one's fault but my own, but he didn't. He worked hard, he got there, and he gets to go at least be on the team with the Yankees each and every day. And so when he would walk to the plate, he would think of someone who'd like to be where he is to get himself into a state of gratefulness. And then I said, spark confidence through self-talk. All right, initiate an aggressive mental mindset through what you say to yourself. So he would have a phrase that's unrepeatable that he would say in his mind to the pitcher when he would walk up. All right, and where I came up with this is I told him a story about my friend from Bud's, Sal Defranco. Sal, you want to come up here with me while I share this story about you? Come on up here, Sal. See, there's a smile. Show him the smile. There's the smile. No matter what. No matter how cold we were, it was that face all the time. So we're in third phase of Bud's, which is the last part, and we're on San Clemente Island, which is also known as the island where no one can hear you scream. And we're done. We've done all the testing. We're good to go. We're going to graduate in like a week, and we can see light at the end of the tunnel. It's like, holy crap, dude, this is happening. Right?
Through there.
But we have to do a swim, and every class does it. It's a rite of passage, I guess. And it's 1 mile at night through an area where there's known to be great white sharks. And they bring us into a classroom, and we had to watch videos of people getting eaten by sharks. So
It gets worse. It gets much worse.
So we watched the videos. What you got, Mike?
I was an instructor out there, and that's when the big boy came out and was eating everybody. A lot of people knows about San Clemente Island. It's a great feeding area for the great white sharks. Well, when the movie came out, and this was 1974. And so I got the video and the movie and all that stuff. and I had the music on these loudspeakers going boom, 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 all the shorts and stuff. I was an asshole. But, so I said, don't worry about these guys. So the night before they went out to go swimming, we watched the movie. And I said, don't worry about it, guys. That shark was just taken right over there. And then that's the one you go to SeaWorld and see that great big, 26-foot long shark over there. I said, I'm going to protect you. Don't worry about this. Don't worry about this. So they jumped on off the pier, and it's a 7-mile swim around there. And so we got the boat up there, and I got these big loudspeakers, and all our guys with guns and all this stuff. And so there's these kids jumping in the water, and they go, and I turn the music on, boom, 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 and all this stuff. Everybody look out for those sharks. I had this big old megaphone. I said, make sure you watch those sharks. Make sure you look for those sharks. I didn't mean some of the guys made it. Some of the guys just quit. So I said, oh my God, there's a damn shark. I go, good gun. Don't worry, we're protecting. We had guys on the other side. I was a real asshole. But, being an instructor, and like you were saying, mental is everything. Because as Rick and I know, we're not going to do anything as swim buddies, and we will protect you with our own lives, and that's what it's all about. But to get that mental inside your head, to know that guy's going to be there with you. Before I let one of those sharks eat one of them kids, I'd have been between them and the shark. But it would just have that thing there. I said, oh my God, this is the best training film I'll ever have in my life. And like you say, San Clemente Island was something else to have. It really was. So I just wanted to throw that in there. So,
I'm going to build right off of that. So, thank you, Mike. We went outside. You got to get a swimmer inspection. They check your gear, make sure everything's proper, your knife is sharp. We've been through that a bunch of times. Nobody fails it too much anymore. One of the instructors wanted to make it a little more interesting, and he came out with a bucket of blood and fish guts from where he had filleted his fish that he had caught earlier that day. And he said, I'm going to chum you guys. And he comes out and he's got a big, what did he have? Was it like a soup ladle?
Yeah. So I was the youngest guy. I'm pretty loud. I was the youngest guy in our buds class, and so I had a lot of these weird responsibilities. And one of the responsibilities out on the island in third base was I was responsible for bringing the fish chum to our swims. And I would have to stand next to the instructor with a cauldron of fish guts and blood while he would ladle it. You would have to sit there with your wetsuit open. You were sitting down at this point. With your wetsuit open, take a ladle of fish guts and blood and put it into your wetsuit.
In your wetsuit, on your head, everywhere.
And then the slowest pair, which I remember who it was, I won't say their names to put them on blast, but the slowest pair, they would put gutted fish in their cargo pockets.
So that was me. They came up and said, you're a slow swimmer, Kuhn, you need extra motivation. And he took a whole fish, a big one, shoves it in my cargo pocket. And it worked. I swam really fast. They're very smart about the way they train us there. But I had to return the fish upon completion of the swim. So we're covered in blood, guts hanging off of us, and we're running down to the beach. You got to run about a mile to get to the beach where you're going to do the swim. It's dark, it's at night, and generally in buds, in the more intense evolutions, guys will sing a song or tell a joke or rip on each other or whatever. Anything to kind of focus on anything about other than what you're about to do. But this time it was just quiet. I mean, it was just footsteps, The whole class, nobody's saying, no, like, man, if Sal's not joking around, then this is bad, And then all of a sudden he's up in front of me a little bit. I see his arms go up like this. Both his arms go up. Like this, and he starts shouting. He goes, "Our Father, who art in heaven," and he starts saying the Lord's Prayer. I'm like, man, that sounds like a damn good idea right now. So I start saying the Lord's Prayer with Sal, and other guys start jumping in, and a few of the other guys are like, "Hey, bros, how do the words to the prayer go so we could say it with you?" And they're like, "Too late for you guys, right?" And we get down to the water. But as we got down to the water to swim, the whole energy in the class had changed from being afraid or nervous at least, to aggression. Guys are pulling out their dive knife, pretend like, where's a shark at? I'm going to hunt a shark, and trying to find a shark. Everything changed because one guy took it upon himself to lead through it rather than just get through it. And what I learned is when I got in the water with my other slow swim buddy, I focused on him, how hard we were swimming, and the direction. Those three things, just over and over again. And just try to keep my focus locked into that till we get to the other side. And when we got to the other side, everybody was fine, but the respect that I had for my teammates had grown exponentially, and the trust that we had in each other had grown. And I've thought about that as well. When I say free yourself from the requirement, right? Like, you're going to get eaten by a shark or you're not. You can't control that, but you can control how you engage it. It's either going to be terrifying or it can be exhilarating as you put out, focus on your teammates, and forge yourselves through that adversity. Kind of the same thing jumping out of a plane, right? It can be terrifying or it can be awesome as you're executing what you need to execute, and then you're under canopy floating down to the ground, and it's a really cool feeling if you allow it to be. And so I've thought about those things a lot and how they apply. So if you get nervous out there on the field today, free yourself from the requirement of the outcome. Just be the best that you can possibly be in that moment. Be thankful and grateful to be here. I am. Thank you all. Spark confidence through self-talk. Be mentally tough, team first, fight for each other, and be resilient because it's how winning is done, and it pays to be a winner. Thank you guys very much.
Yeah,